What we'd like to talk with you about today is kind of the growing threat of around information security and the criminal activity that's going around in regard to stealing identities of various folks. I really kind of have the information security perspective from this. I think Ron has an exceptionally good perspective on kind of the law enforcement and the prosecuting crimes perspective. So I think there you go. He is. He's not just a police officer, but he's also an IT whiz of a sort. So he brings some great experience, especially to a college police force. So anyway, what we thought we'd start with is, why should we care about information security? And one of the things that we say in the IT world is that information security is really everybody's responsibility. And that's because each and every one of us, whether you know it or not, are being targeted on a regular, if not daily basis by criminals who want to essentially steal money from you somehow. And the way they do that is by getting information that they can either turn into money or they can use to steal your actual money. So it's a big deal, and it's something that's happening to every single one of us, whether you know it or not. We have a huge, for those of us that are faculty and staff in the room, we have a huge responsibility to protect student data in a variety of ways, and because it can be a source of identity theft, and you've probably heard over the years about various colleges and universities who have had significant data breaches and lost personally identifiable information of their students and employees. And that happens frequently. I've gotten quite a few letters in the mail over the years from my alma maters that said, oh, by the way, we are sad to tell you that this happened. We also need to do this so that we can protect the functionality of our resources and your resources at home to make sure that they continue to run the way we need them to, the way you need them to, because an infection or a breach on a large scale, such as a college network or server farm, but also on a small scale in terms of individual computers in your home, can really prevent you from doing the kinds of things you need to do on a personal basis or for academic pursuits or any of those kinds of things. And finally, the main reason why we should all care is breaches are very, very expensive. People who have had their identity stolen have spent enormous amounts of time recovering from that. One of the managers on my team came by to see me yesterday to ask if she could have the day off on Friday because she needed to go meet with her accountant because last year someone had filed a fraudulent tax return on her behalf, and it's taken her the better part of 9 months to undo that mess, and she's trying to make sure that it doesn't happen again this year, and so she's having to take extra steps to be cautious about filing her taxes. So whether you're the CTO of a large college district or the chief of police for a large college district, it takes up an enormous amount of our time, which we'd rather invest in other more productive and valuable activities on behalf of everyone here at Foothill and De Anza College. But it also can be individually, personally, very expensive for everybody. So with that, Ron, jump in at any point. One of the things we thought we'd share with you is to give you some idea of how expensive these things can be. You've probably heard about most of these breaches. Probably many of you in the room may even have been directly affected by this last one at Yahoo. But these things cost corporations and individuals huge amounts of money, $250 million, $43 million, $250 million. Maricopa Community College District is in Arizona, around the Phoenix metropolitan area. Very, very, very large district, 10 campuses, hundreds of thousands of students. They had a breach a couple years ago. They've already spent $26 million to investigate and remediate that breach. That's money that didn't go to their students. that didn't go to hiring more faculty, that didn't go to supporting their classified staff, that didn't go to beautifying their campus, or whatever thing they wanted to spend that money on. They spent it on legal fees and investigations and paying for credit monitoring and all kinds of things. The Yahoo breach, I know Ron's been following that one pretty closely because it does affect a lot of students, cost hundreds of millions of accounts were compromised, and the value of their corporation went down by billions of dollars, literally. They were in negotiations. Are they still in negotiations?
They closed with Verizon.
Okay, so Verizon got a real bargain because I think that it went from something like 4.5 million or billion to 2.6 billion or something. So they got a $2 billion discount because of that breach. So these things cost real money.
Right, and one of the things that you have to realize is, especially with like the Target and the Home Depot breaches, they got credit card information, your credit card information. And that is one of the significant pieces. So it's not just that place got breached and their financials got affected, it also can affect you as the consumer. And that's the real scary part. So.
Indeed. So to give you some idea of what a breach might cost our district, our two colleges, we look at, there's an organization called the Ponemon Institute. It's a nonprofit organization that studies information security topics, and particularly around breaches and the cost of breaches. And you can go and check them out if you're so interested. But they track the cost of breaches, and they break it down by industry often. And there's some pretty good data in there. So what is the cost of a breach? If our college, if our district had a breach, what would we have to pay? Well, generally speaking, when there's a breach, corporations, enterprises, organizations generally pay to notify, they're required by law to notify people that there's been a breach and let the people who have been affected know. They generally speaking have to pay for credit monitoring for those individuals for 12 to 24 months, and that's not cheap. Especially when you're talking about hundreds of thousands or possibly millions of customers. They have to maintain some kind of communications scenario, a call center, if you will. Because when letters go out to people, they often want to know, is this real? I got this letter from you. Did you really send it to me? Is this a real thing? What am I supposed to do? How does it affect me? There's got to be somebody there to answer phones, answer emails, those kinds of things. That's not cheap. In addition, there may be liability. People may bring individual lawsuits. People may bring class action lawsuits. There may be liability claims that they have to pay out on. They certainly have to look at upgrading the systems that were breached to make sure they don't happen again. And that can take time and a lot of money and a lot of effort. And they may lose business. So, people might stop shopping at Target or Home Depot, or people might stop registering at Foothill or De Anza College because they've lost confidence in the organization. And all those things cost real money. So to give you some idea of what that might look like if we had a significant breach here at Foothill De Anza, in our main information system, our main business system, which many of you use in a whole variety of ways, called Banner, we have about 1.4 million Social Security numbers in that system. And the Ponemon Institute estimates that the average cost per record to recover from a breach is about $217 per record. So for us, that looks like about $304 million of potential liability. Would it go that high? Probably not, but it could potentially go. So it's a big deal, it's significant, and we protect against it pretty substantially. So latest threats, and there's some important ones out there. The big one you've probably been hearing a lot about recently is ransomware. We'll talk about that more in a minute. Phishing scams are really, really common. I know Ron sees a lot of these coming through his shop all the time. Covert data modification, we'll talk about that in a minute, but that's kind of like filing the false tax return or changing your bank routing. And we'll talk about situations that have happened. Social engineering is changing a lot, and we'll talk about what that is and how to avoid it. And of course, the tried and true malware and viruses are still coming in on email mostly, but also on devices, where did I put it? Like this. Beware of the thumb drive, as we say. So, Ron, are you seeing other stuff that
those are the major ones. I mean,
which are the ones that crush your desk most often?
Mostly phishing is the big one, but we are seeing data manipulation, which is the result of phishing in most cases, and the trend in general law enforcement across the U.S., actually across the world, is we're seeing a lot of intellectual property theft, and that is insider threats. So we don't really have any research that we're doing here, but the universities that do significant research, huge risk, and especially from those thumb drives.
Yeah, and the good point on the research universities, they may often have intellectual property that is related to patents, and those patents can be very lucrative sources of revenue for the institution. That's one of the things that helps universities pay the cost of running the institution, is that they get these revenues from patents that they've developed with their faculty and their researchers that have real commercial value. And so when that intellectual property is compromised, the value of that research goes way down, and the revenue stream to the university can subsequently be compromised, and that has a real impact directly on students. So. Ransomware. So you may have seen about 3 weeks ago or a month ago, Los Angeles Valley College, one of the 9 colleges in the Los Angeles Community College District, reported that they had paid a ransom of $28,000 in Bitcoin to recover some of their systems that they needed to run their term that began in January, that had been taken over by criminals and had been paralyzed and held for ransom. Had they not paid that, they wouldn't have been able to unlock those systems. They probably would have had a really hard time starting the term. They may have even had to cancel classes or postpone them. And so even though $28,000 is really a horrific penalty that they had to pay, they thought it was in their students' best interest to do that and to get their systems back. So ransomware is all over the place. I'm on a whole variety of lists, I think you probably are too, that I see stuff every single day that has to do with protecting against ransomware, planning to recover from it, all kinds of stuff. It must be every day. I don't know if you're seeing that kind of stuff too.
There's nobody that's exempt.
Yes.
I see posts about law enforcement agencies getting stuck with ransomware. There was another big medical hospital and medical center that was hit with ransomware, and it locked up all their patient records. So no one is immune from this, and all it takes is one click.
There you go. So essentially what ransomware is a criminal finds a way to break in to a single desktop, onto a server, onto a network switch, any number of devices in an enterprise, and they plant malicious software on there that locks those systems up and prevents them from being used for their intended purpose. And then they contact someone at the institution, someone like me or someone like the chief, and say, we've locked you up and we'll be happy to give you the password to unlock that for this much money. And if you don't pay us, then we won't unlock your systems. And sometimes they even go as far as saying, if you don't pay us by this day, we will never unlock your systems. In fact, we will begin the process of destroying the data on your systems. So it escalates very quickly. This has happened at Foothill De Anza. not to the extent that it's disabled us from offering classes or doing business, but we have had individuals call up and say, oh my God, something horrible has happened to my desktop computer. It's locked up, it's frozen, and I just got a call from somebody that says, pay me $250 and I'll unlock your computer. So fortunately for us, it has happened on a very isolated basis on individual desktops. And also, fortunately for us, the criminals were really bad criminals. And we were able to expunge their malicious software from the computer and recover it for the individual without having to actually pay a ransom or lose any data. Have you seen any other stuff either here or at other colleges?
Well, obviously, the big one was the LA incident, and not that this is a solution, but there is ransomware insurance now. This is such a big deal.
Yeah, there is.
That people act, and that's what happened in LA. They actually had ransomware insurance, and they paid it through their insurance.
Yeah, we do have, here in our district, we do have breach insurance. I'm not sure whether it covers ransomware or not. I don't know whether we have the ransomware rider or not on our insurance policy, but we do have breach insurance. So if something horrible happened, we not only have some financial backup, but more importantly, we would have access to a highly skilled forensic team that could work with our IT folks, that could work with our district police and other law enforcement agencies to investigate the situation, figure out what happened, figure out what the exposure was, figure out how to recover from that, things of that sort.
Are you able to catch any of these people now?
Most of them are out of the country.
Yeah. Eastern Europe a lot, China. They're not really.
How does the money get routed?
Bitcoin, or the biggest scam right now is for people that are being hit at home. They have you go down to the local store and buy a green dot card, load it up, and give them the number.
Yep. So Bitcoin is a cyber currency that is really almost impossible to trace. So you can go somewhere, you can use your credit card and buy Bitcoin, and then once you've transferred it, it's untraceable. You can't undo that purchase like a credit card. You can't call the credit card company up and say, yeah, that was a bogus purchase, cancel that. Once you've paid it, it's gone. Untraceable, never see it again, and it's an international cyber currency.
Yeah. So this presentation doesn't get into this, but there's a whole thing called the dark net. There's a whole other world out there besides what we know as the public internet. There's a whole nother dark web out there that is
of very bad people.
Very bad people, and things like Bitcoin are the currency. And you can literally buy and sell just about anything there. And it's a huge problem. It is transnational. And all of the federal law enforcement and intelligence agencies are actively working these cases because it's everything from human trafficking to drugs, guns, you name it, it's there.
Yep. So moving along, beyond ransomware. Phishing for hacker treasure. What do hackers really, really, really want to get from you? And the answer is very, very simple. It is, they want your username and password. So we see a ton of phishing emails, and phishing is an attempt by a criminal to fake you out or scare you into providing your username and password. So it comes in a number of ways. You might get an email from your bank that says, Judy, you're currently overdrawn in your checking account. You need to click here and log in and verify whether these transactions were real. And then you click on that site. It takes you to a site that looks like your bank, but it's not. It's a criminal site. You enter your username and password, and they might say, oh, great, thanks, never mind, our error, sorry, but you've already given up your username and password. We see them come in saying, this is the Foothill De Anza IT department, and your email account is overflowing, and you need to log in here and ask for more storage space. And they try to pretend to be ETS, or they might try to pretend to be the district police, or they might try to pretend to be your doctor's office, or the IRS, or any number of agencies, and some of them are really schlocky and crappy looking, and you can go, yeah, that's junk. Some of them are really good, and they really look legitimate, and people get tricked by them all the time. And so by giving up a legitimate credential, a legitimate username and password, that allows the criminals to do a lot of stuff. So going back to the slide about the major breaches like Target and Home Depot and things of those sort, and probably, I don't know if you know any of the details on the LA Valley College thing, we may never know, but I would almost guarantee that ransomware started with a phishing attack where an employee gave up a credential that allowed the criminals to log into a legitimate system and then find their way through the network, through their information systems, to other places, and then do bad things. So don't ever give your username and password.
Yeah, so I mean, a lot of us get notices from our bank with credit card statements and maybe offers for balance transfers. We all get those things, but almost all of them always will have your actual name, and they will generally have like the last 4 digits of your account number, something that you can use to verify that information, and that will give you a hint. Most of the phishing emails, number one, will not have your real name. It might have your email address, but not your real name. And if they have an account number listed, it's not going to be yours. So a lot of times they'll take something from Chase Bank, from Citibank, from any of the major institutions, and they'll copy it. They'll take the banners, they'll take all the wording, and they'll transfer it. So the other thing to take a look at is, and like I said, we're not going to get into a whole big thing, but if you hover over the link that's provided, it generally is not what it says. It might say www.citibank.com. When you hover it over, it's probably going to say www.crook.ru. And that will be a big hint that that is not the site that you're looking for.
Right,
so
exactly.
That's a real easy way to look at that and not click on that, and that will give you a good indication that that's not a good email.
Right.
I get a lot of emails that I want to unsubscribe to, so I don't remember subscribing, and I click on unsubscribe. Should I stop doing that?
It depends.
Yeah, that
depends.
would be my answer.
Yeah, so it depends. So if it looks like it's something that is probably something that you might have had some remote association for, I get subscribed to a lot of college email stuff that has no bearing on my job. So I'm usually pretty good going, yeah, I can unsubscribe from that. But if you get one that is for auto racing, you have nothing to do with auto racing, chances are that's probably a scam. Don't do it. Now, if you consistently get the same email, so if it says, we're going to email you once a week from Joe Smith Profits Unlimited, and you keep getting them every week, that would probably be okay to go ahead and unsubscribe because it looks like someone put your email address in there. But if
or somebody you do business with sold your address
your
to somebody
address,
else.
and that happens, unfortunately, a lot. Yeah. Yeah, so if you don't
If you
want...
only get it once, don't click on the...
Yeah, I wouldn't, yeah, because all that does is it lets them know it's a valid email address.
And that you're willing to click on their thing.
Yeah.
So.
Yes.
Can you guys address changing passwords? Because I don't think I've ever been prompted to change my password.
We're gonna talk about that in a minute. That's on our list.
It's never once a year.
Once a year, but we're going to talk about that in a minute. So, rolling along. Covert data modification. So, what this really refers to is criminals who get your credentials through a phishing scam, and then they go to another place and they change your data to do something bad to you. So this could be, although changing student records would be a bad thing from our perspective, somebody might not lose any money over that. But you could have people. We have seen instances where criminals or badly motivated students might try to find somebody's credential to be able to go in and change a grade they didn't like. That doesn't happen a whole lot, but it's possible. It does.
So I have to tell you one real quick story.
Yeah, go for it.
This is a little history, but this is a little something. 1985 was when the state of California came up with their first hacker law. And that was the first time they ever had a penal code section that could deal with hackers. Well, I happened to be working at Stanford at the time, and we had a big timeshare system. And the Fremont Union High School District was using that for their grades. Well, in the office, on the little pull-out desk, were the password and username for the timeshare machine. Well, one of the little ingenious student workers in the office did that and started changing grades, and then was changing his friends' grades. And so if you ever saw the 1983 movie War Games, that is where the inspiration for that.
There you go. Matthew Broderick made that famous.
Right. And then the last little piece of history, War Games, if any of you have seen that, has a connection to Foothill De Anza. Can anybody tell me what that is?
Nope.
They broke in the movie, they broke into the satellite control facility, which is now our education center.
Oh, the Blue Cube.
The Blue Cube.
There
That's
you
right.
go. Absolutely. So two of the most common things we see in the covert data modification field are changing bank records, particularly around direct deposit, and changing tax records. And both of these have happened to Foothill De Anza folks. So a couple of years ago, we got a call in ETS from Nancy Chow, who's our most exceptional payroll supervisor, and said, you know, I'm seeing this kind of weird rash of people changing their direct deposit instructions. And they're happening at in the middle of the night at like 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. And we see this with regularity because people change banks and credit unions and things of that sort. But we usually don't see more than 1 or 2 a week. And this week we saw 13. And we went, whoa, that's bad. So we quickly disabled the system that allowed people to change their bank records. We contacted those 13 people and said, did you in fact change your direct deposit records? They're like, no, I didn't. Oh my God. And we went in and found out that they had been a victim of a phishing scam, that they had relinquished their credentials to criminals. Those criminals knew that they worked at Foothill De Anza. They logged into my portal. They went into the direct deposit and they changed the bank records to route the paychecks to banks out of state. Then they went into their email and they set up filters to automatically delete any messages generated from my portal that says, this is just to confirm that you changed your bank record. And so people never knew that this happened. So fortunately for all of us, our colleague Nancy is really on top of this stuff, watches it like a hawk, alerted us, and we were able to terminate that before any payroll was lost. We've subsequently gone back and added 2 more layers of security to the direct deposit record function in my portal so that if you want to change your routing, you have to know what your old routing was, and you have to enter that before it'll allow you to enter any new routing. So it's not 100% infallible, but it's about 99.9%. Tax records, we've had many people report that they had fraudulent tax returns filed in their name. Our previous Chancellor, Linda Thor, that happened to her. Andrew Lamonck, our interim VP of Instruction, that happened to him. Lisa Hosevar, who's our network manager on my team, happened to her. It's happened to quite a few people, and they've had fraudulent returns filed in their name, and those returns went to the criminals' banks. So that's not something that we have any control over. This is somebody who's stealing records. We have not been able to figure out the common thread. We thought at first, many of you may have heard a couple of years ago, Anthem Blue Cross had a major breach of about 80 million records. We tried to see if there was some consistent thread across that. We couldn't make that connection because a lot of the people that were here had different health plans, so we weren't able to figure out exactly what the connection was. It may have just been coincidental that there were 12 or 15 or 20 people from Foothill De Anza that were impacted.
Not to mention the IRS had their system hacked.
Yeah.
And they,
Exactly.
lost some information too.
So all the more reason to keep your username and password under wraps. So moving along. Social engineering. This here is a real example of social engineering that happened to us last year. Fortunately, our good friend and colleague Doreen Novotny, our Vice Chancellor of HR, is on the lookout for this stuff. But, and this has been happening again and again and again this tax season. And it happened to our colleagues at Solano Community College District, and they actually fell for it and sent copies of all of their employees' W-2 forms to criminals. So what you see here is what appears to be a message from President Brian Murphy, De Anza's president, to Vice Chancellor Doreen Novotny. And it's basically saying, Doreen, please send me copies of all the W-2 forms for our employees. I need them right away. Get on it. Blah, 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 blah. Thanks, Brian. Blah, so on and so forth. And of course, Doreen got this and went, that's bogus. Alerted us to it. We began updating our systems. But a couple of things to look at. Number one, it says Brian Murphy, but similar to what the chief mentioned about looking closer at where it's going to, obviously this is not Dr. Murphy's email address. There's a couple of other things. There's some spelling and language usage problems in here, capitalization problem, poor use of a comma. For those of you that know our colleague, President Murphy, you know that he would never write like that. You also know that he would never in a million years identify himself as the president from Foothill De Anza Community College District. He would always say, I'm the president of De Anza College, and I'm not in Los Altos Hills, I'm in Cupertino, and he'd never put the district logo in a message. So there's all kinds of clues in here that tell us this is bogus. But this same kind of message went to somebody at Solano. They thought they were getting a direct order from the president of their college, and they said, oh my God, the president wants this stuff, I better get it right away. Here you go. And they handed it off to some criminal who used it to do bad things. So that was, but we've seen a whole nother rash of these. Again, our ever diligent payroll supervisor, Nancy, got, I think, probably 3 of these in the last 2 weeks, and knows not to fall for it, and alerted us, and we're working on that. But all kinds of other messages come in around social engineering that may not be quite as obvious, like what are some of the other social engineering ones that you've seen, Ron?
The big one that's going around that affects both home and work is you'll get a phone call and say, hi, this is Joe from IT. We got an alert that there's a virus on your computer. I need you to log on and go to this website for us. We need to have you download some software to remove the virus that's on your computer. Or, hi, I'm from Microsoft. We need to upgrade your operating system.
Yeah, we've gotten that call at our house.
Yeah. So those 2 are the big ones, and they hit, like I say, both home and business. So those are huge, huge.
There's another one that is going around right now where somebody will call your home or even your office and ask you some seemingly innocuous question that you probably would answer yes to, and they record that yes, and then they use that as some kind of evidence that you in fact subscribe to some bogus system or that you authorize some bogus charge on your credit card, and they say, well, Twee, of course this was you, because we have your voice recording that says you said yes. So
yeah, that's a new one.
That's a new one. That's called the "Can you hear me now" scam.
Correct.
So watch out for that. Watch out for that.
So always say no when.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry,
Right.
answer, you don't ever say yes.
Right, exactly,
Yeah.
yes. I
And-
can hear you,
Right,
yes.
and so one of the big ones, I get them probably like once a week on my cell phone, it's this person that, it's a female voice, and she says, oh, I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Oh, I got that one.
Yeah, something was wrong with my headset, can you hear me? And so, of course, the first time I had not heard about the scam, I said, yeah, can you hear me? And then I realized it was a recording. I went, oh no, and hung up. And now every time I get it, I just, hang up. But the first time, I hadn't heard about this scam yet. So, but this is something that'll affect you
Yeah,
everywhere.
I got one of those the other day too.
Yeah.
From some vacation
Oh, yeah,
award.
Marriott.
Yeah,
that-
exactly.
Yeah.
So watch out for social engineering. So,
Did you learn about all of this in the cybersecurity class?
They learn how to protect you.
yes, exactly.
Yeah. And then the other one is that someone will call you and say that they're from the district and they need specific information. And so sometimes folks will want to get some sort of confidential information. They'll say, hey, I'm out. We don't have a lot of printed directories anymore, but in days gone by when we had printed directories, they'll go, hey, I'm at home. Can you send me the employee directory? And then it's the whole treasure trove, because then it's got everybody's name, job, phone number, and email. So those are the kinds of things that do happen. And I mean, if you get a phone call from somebody who says, hey, I don't know what so-and-so's email is, can you let me know? Well, I mean, everybody in the district knows the email is last name, first name at fhda.edu. So it's not really hard to figure out. So those are the kind of social engineering calls that you may get at a desk, and thinking it's very innocuous. So unless it's someone that you know personally that's
Right.
asking for it, don't fall for it.
And you may not actually be giving up confidential information, but you may be giving up one piece of information that a criminal can then use to get to somebody else, to get another piece and another piece and another piece, and pretty soon they've assembled enough information to steal someone's identity. So, moving along, what do we got next? Malware and viruses. This is less of a threat than it used to be, but it's still a threat. We're still seeing a lot of malicious code coming in on Word documents and things that are usually referred to as drive-by infections. So if you go to an otherwise legitimate website, it's been hacked. The criminals have put malicious code on the website that automatically downloads to your computer without you even knowing it. We're getting much better at that. We have a really aggressive security appliance on our email system. It gets rid of, it filters out 88% of all the email traffic that comes to the district as legitimately bogus. So that's a gigantic amount. It also does a couple of other things. It scans attachments for viruses. And if they're infected, it quarantines them. It also will sometimes trap people who are clicking on links that go to bad places. If that's a known bad place, it'll stop you and say, Judy, did you really want to go there? Because we think it's a bad place. You might want to reconsider. And a lot of people go, oh, yeah, no, sorry, I fell for it. So it's a second chance. But it's still a problem, still something we have to be aware of. Still, we're using endpoint security for virus scanning and things of that sort. But that's a little more under control than it probably ever has been.
So, but the key to this is that if you have computers at home, please make sure you have current antivirus software on your systems. It used to be you bought it and then you got free updates. They don't do that anymore. It's subscription based and you've got to buy it every year. But please buy the software and do the updates. Set it to auto update and get those new definitions, because literally every single day there is a new virus, something new that comes up in the wild, and it can harm your computer if you happen to be unlucky enough to click on it. So make sure that you've got that on your home computers. It's a pain in the butt, and sometimes it'll slow your computer down a little bit, but in the end, it will really
You'll
save
be
you
grateful.
a lot of headaches.
There you go. So what can end users do? What can end users do? So here's the tips of how you can be safer. So first of all, never, ever, 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 ever share your username and password with anybody. Not with a colleague, not with an assistant, not with your supervisor. Well, your supervisor can actually ask you for that, but don't share it unless there's really an absolute legitimate direction to do that. Don't share it with anybody, because the minute you share it, it's out of your control. You don't know what anybody would do with that. Certainly, ETS or no one at the district will ever ask you for your username and password, not in an email, not on the phone. We just don't do it. So if someone calls you up and says they're from ETS and they need your username and password, they're lying, and let us know. Beware of phishing scams. We talked about this. Again, a reputable organization, whether it's your bank, the IRS, Social Security Administration, healthcare providers, our district, we will never ask you for your password, username and ID, username and password via email. Legitimate organizations just don't do that, mostly because they don't have any need to do that, but also because it's bad practice. If you get tricked, if you see something and it just seems so totally legitimate that it compels you to do it, and then all of a sudden you realize, oh, I shouldn't have done that, call us immediately. You might be a little embarrassed. We'd rather have you call us. We'd rather have the opportunity to help you protect yourself, and we can take steps immediately to work with you to do that. Most immediately change your password and then let us know so that we can be on the lookout for that. Beware of social engineering scams. As Ron said, know definitively who you're speaking with by phone or in person. A lot of people have the ability to spoof caller ID, all kinds of things, so that it looks like they are, but if it doesn't seem right, if it doesn't sound right, if you didn't expect the call, if you're not really familiar with the person, it's probably bogus. Use different passwords. So people have a tendency to use the same password for a whole bunch of stuff. Use different passwords, because if one password gets compromised, chances are good, criminals are very clever, they'll figure out where you bank, where you work, where you go to school, all those kinds of things, and they'll use that password to try to make their way into other systems. And if you're using the same password across multiple systems, then you've given them the keys to the kingdom. Our good friend and colleague Robert Cormia asked us to add this one, and that's beware of USB drives. So these good little things, you get them all over the place. They're huge. They're mega gigabytes anymore. They're free, or you can buy them for dirt cheap. They're handy. Be careful how you use them, because if you have a lot of personal data on here and you lose it, then people can find that. At my previous institution, one of the most significant breaches we had was our School of Business had a volunteer tax preparer program for accounting majors that did free tax preparation for low-income people and seniors, and they kept all their records, including Social Security numbers, on a USB drive, and they lost it. So it was a reportable breach, and we had to deal with it. It was truly unfortunate, and it was really, really bad press for a great student project that served a lot of people. So beware of these. Use cloud services. Use Google Apps. Use Microsoft OneDrive, Office 365. There are other good cloud services that are secure that you could get to just about anywhere, much, 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 much safer than one of these. So moving along. Use strong passwords. So to get to your question, what's a strong password? Something more than 8 characters. Use upper and lowercase characters. Include numbers. Include special characters like period or question mark or comma or exclamation point or other things. We do actually require folks here, faculty and staff and students, to change their password once a year. We usually do it in late February, early March. So we'll get, but we've stopped announcing it because what we found was that criminals were monitoring our email traffic, and they were watching for when we announced the password reset timing, and they were using that to spoof ETS. Sharon Luchu, our director of networking and client services, spoof her email address to send phishing scams out to people saying, your password change didn't work, you got to do it again, click here, or something to that effect. So we stopped announcing it because it was a liability. But we do change that, require people to change that once a year. You can change it anytime you want. There's an automatic password reset utility on my portal. Report suspicious activity immediately. You can report it to ETS, to the call center. You can report it to district police. Either of us will be happy to take your report. We work very closely together, so when we see something that comes in over one call center or the other that needs the other to be involved, we work very closely with Ron and his staff to activate the appropriate personnel depending on the incident. And as Rod said, follow these same practices at home. Please, please, please follow these same practices at home. Use any virus and any malware applications. There are free ones, good free ones. If you want, let me know, and I'll be happy to share some of those with you. What else?
So on passwords, how many of you, and be honest, write down your passwords on something?
Ooh.
Yeah. You almost have to because you have so many, because the whole thing is don't repeat the password, right? So I use an app on my phone that is secure and encrypted. And I would highly recommend that you consider doing something like that rather than writing down your passwords. Because I think I have somewhere in the neighborhood of 55 or 60 passwords for all different kinds of systems.
And what's the name of that one? You shared that with me, and it's a really good one.
Safe in the Cloud.
Yeah, there you go. That's a really good one.
It works on all platforms. You can use it on iOS, on Android, and there's also a desktop application. You can get to it from your desktop.
Yep.
But it's
much better than writing it down.
It's much better. And if you have like an iPhone, I access it with my thumbprint. So I don't have to remember the password to it. I just use my thumbprint and I can get into my passwords. So think about doing something like that rather than having a piece of paper with all your passwords on it.
There you go.
And here's one other little trick that someone from the FBI taught me. If you have a password that you like to use for a particular system and you have to change it, in my case, I have to change passwords every 90 days on certain systems, and that's just terribly cumbersome. So I add a 2-digit number, front, middle, or the end. So the first time I use it, it's 01. 90 days later, I change it to 02 and just change it that way. And then the rest of the password stays the same. So your password changes, but it's that one digit that changes just enough that the system will allow you to continue to do that.
That's a good strategy. I do something very similar.
And I'll tell you, I've used that for the last couple years, and it's worked fantastic for me. So just a little thought that if you have, whatever password you like to use and you hate to change it, just add the digits in the front, center, or the back, and that is a good strategy.
Go for it. Resources, go for it.
So as Joe mentioned, you can contact either ETS or the police department if you have something that's either suspicious or if something has happened and you've actually had some sort of data breach. So every single law enforcement agency is mandated to take a data breach, if it's your credit card, anything like that. It doesn't matter where it happened, the local law enforcement agency in California must take that report. And then they'll take that report and forward it on. However, a lot of these things are across state lines and also across countries.
International lines.
Right, transnational. So one thing to do is use the Internet Crime Complaint Center to file a report. And when you fill that information out online, they will then forward it to the local law enforcement agency for investigation. But it's really important because the FBI tracks cybercrime. And this is huge. I mean, I get bulletins all the time from the FBI about all different types of activity that's going on. they actually have a monthly briefing talking about the trends in cybercrime. The state of California has one of their divisions of the Office of Emergency Services. It's a cybercrime division. You can get on their Twitter feed, actually, and watch their information. So that is where you can file a report, something that occurs online. So if you are unlucky enough to have your data breached and you are a victim of identity theft, the two best resources for you are the Federal Trade Commission's identity theft site, which is identitytheft.gov, and they give you a long list of ideas, suggestions on how to respond to any sort of identity theft that may occur. And the other part is your annual credit report. This site, annualcreditreport.com, is sponsored by all three of the credit bureaus. You are entitled to a free report once a year. I highly recommend that you log on to annualcreditreport.com and get your report once a year. There's a lot of other resources out there that that have credit monitoring, identity monitoring. You can obviously pay for that stuff if you want, but you can do a lot of this really on your own. So just be very careful, but if you are a victim, please reach out and get some assistance.
Yeah,
because
it better to be embarrassed than ripped off.
Correct, correct, yeah, and a lot of times it's all timeliness. So if you discover at 5 o'clock that you have had a major breach of your bank account and money's missing, don't wait till the next day to make the phone call. Call law enforcement immediately, have them come out, because we have 24-hour numbers for banks, and we can at least start to get some help for you, okay? So unfortunately, identity theft is a huge business, and the sale of data is huge. One of the big things that happens is that when those credit card numbers are stolen, they're put on that dark net that I mentioned earlier and sold. Anybody can go on there and buy your credit card number. So that's why it's so important to report any sort of data breach that happens to you or identity theft immediately. Don't wait.
So Ron and I will hang around for a little bit if anybody has any other questions, but thanks for coming. Be safe, be aware. Thanks, Judy, for pulling us together.